1994 was the second year being in the master's class. Matt Spiegelmeyer and I, we had a really good day. He ended up beating me in the end, but it was close. So I was really, really happy. Then, I think it was 95 or 96, that was a tough year. It rained, I think it was 1995. It rained so much that year, kind of like this year. And I remember Misha Spotnik, we were just talking about it today. We took a wrong turn, both of us. I think he was ahead of me. Had gone up, done a U-turn, heading back down, and there's a rut. I was flying up the rut thinking I was on the right course. He was coming down the rut knowing that he made a mistake. And we hit head on, and his front tire smashed out of CR250. It smashed my front pipe, like ripped it right out of the cylinder. And it was so wet, it was just water hole after water hole. And I remember at one point, I was on one of those railroad beds, and that's supposed to be free time and easy. Well, the water was so darn high, there's one place where it was just flooded. You couldn't see how, you don't know how deep it was, but you figured it's flat, right? So I'm driving along and my bike's making like this ridiculous noise because of the pipe ripped out of the cylinder. And then all of a sudden, halfway through this water hole, the bike disappears. It bubbled a couple times and grabbed a hole and shot up out of the other side. I thought for sure I'd drowned out in that place, but ended up finishing. I'm pretty sure that year I was 5th in the master's class, and they only gave out 4 trophies, and there was only 6 finishers that year. But what was funny about that is the next hare scramble I went to, Jim Kelly shows up with the 5th place trophy. Figured I earned it. That was cool.
If you're fortunate enough to finish, then you actually have a sense of accomplishment that's further enhanced because of the history, I think.
I guess just because of the history of this race, that adds a little something to it. Just the number of people, real good riders that have been here and won it. So.
Live from the Inn on the Park in Toronto and Gold Rock Lodge in Northern Ontario, it's your Saturday Sports Date.
You know, I've done it probably since '85, off and on, not every year. Yeah, it's a big challenge. You know, when you have a good result, it's super amazing. I have one cord log, which is a big treasure thing.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so for me...
In your trophy case, that must be something.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty satisfying to do that. And it's not easy, right? So when you have one of those things, you know that it was well earned.
I think my 23rd, maybe my 24th. I couldn't remember last night. I was trying to get through all the past ones consecutive, wow. So I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
Wow, consecutive?
Yeah, consecutive.
Wow.
So my goal's 50. So if I ride till I'm 70, I can get 50.
Nice to be back with you, Bob Wilson.
Very nice to be back with you, Al Hamill.
And Jim Chorley is standing by there, and he'll be reporting to us live throughout the entire afternoon and telling us what's going on from the Corduroy Enduro, which is a motorcycle event, sort of a trial over roads. Well, you know what it is. Tell them about it.
Okay, Al. Well, this is a very, very interesting event. This is the Canadian National Corduroy Enduro. It's held up near the Gold Rock Lodge. This is near Coboconk, Ontario. It's about 100 miles north of Toronto in the Haliburton Highlands. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful country, particularly at this time of the year when the leaves are just starting to change color. The Enduro, Al, is much like a rally for cars, with one very big exception. It takes place over some of the roughest terrain that anyone could possibly imagine.
I think to ride Enduros competitively, I think you have to be kind of a tough guy. You don't see many sissies out there, put it that way.
Well, it really is a grueling test, Al. As a matter of fact, I can tell you a rather interesting story that I heard this morning. One of the competitors in a past year of the event was actually winning the competition. He was within 100 yards of the finish line when his bike hit some slippery rock coming across a field. The bike went out from underneath him, and he was so exhausted after the 2 days of competition that he actually couldn't lift the bike up to finish the race.
In 1952, two enterprising young men decided to try and develop a two-day endurance event in Canada. This was the start of not only one of Canada's longest-running motorsports events, but also of lifelong friendships and shared experiences. The group got together in May of 2009 to share stories and memories of the time spent laying out and participating in the Corduroy Enduro.
Ron and I had gone to the Jack Pine the year before, and we had such a good time, which is a run down in Michigan. And when we came back, we thought it'd be a good idea if we could have a two-day event up here. So that was in 1952, we were at the Jack Pine. In 53, we got a hold of an old motorcyclist named Bill Hastings, who used to do a lot of announcing. And we told him what our problem was, and he said, well, a friend of his had a cabins up in Norland on Shadow Lake called Gold Rock.
2 days of riding a motorcycle through the treacherous roads and trails of the Haliburton Highlands, some of the finest and most challenging enduro territory in the world. The plan was ambitious, but the beginnings were modest, with only 14 starters at the Glen Eagles Hotel in Scarborough and just 7 finishers the first year.
Yes, I'm here, Al. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loudly and clearly. What's happening? What's happening near Kobukong?
We are located at the moment at Gold Rock Lodge at headquarters here, and we are awaiting the arrival of the leaders of the event. They got away first this morning at 8 o'clock, and will return here around 4:45, I think, is the expected time.
The Corduroy is Canada's premier two-day endurance event. Organizers Ron Jackson and Don Charters of the British Empire Motor Club advise contestants to bring enough money to buy gas for 500 miles. So about $5 for gas, $1 to enter, $2 for accommodations, and $3 for food.
But 50 starters this morning, 45 men and machines are still going at it, hot and heavy, and pretty well to time, too, at the lunch break. The course was laid out this year, has been described by some of the riders as the best ever.
In the early days, Saturday's route would wind through 150 miles of back roads and tracks to Haliburton at Les North's Gold Rock Lodge, the headquarters of the Enduro for 21 years. A place of luxury and prestige, Gold Rock Lodge provided the competitors with a haven of wholesome entertainment and fine cuisine.
Les North was the proprietor there, who had been an old-time motorcycle racer, I think back in the 40s and 30s, I believe. And him and his family used to host the Corduroy. He had a nice piece of property there. I think it was on Shadow Lake, and had cabins. We all used to stay in the cabins. And one of the things I remembered was one of the Dempsey Club members used to come around at 6 o'clock in the morning with a siren and crank this siren up and get everybody up and going. And Les's family would provide a great breakfast. And then it was time to get in line and go, and they used to run 3 or 4 riders per minute. And away you'd go for your day's adventure, and usually it was an adventure.
But the second one, I went out to meet them because they didn't show at Gold Rock, so I kept going down the road in my old man's car. And I lit a fire right in the middle of the crossroads at the Scotch line and some other bloody road. And there's a picture of him, Billy Strawn and Gerald Robarts, sort of standing there, and Billy's hanging over the hood of my car.
People who put it on actually brought their kind of quirkiness or unusual eccentricities into it, and I thought that was always pretty funny.
They had a steam bath, and this was in the middle of winter. And we would cut a hole in the ice to keep our beer, the long bottles back then.
And then the thing was to go into the steam bath, And oh boy, it was hot in there. And then the thing was to run out and run into Shadow Lake and yell and scream because of the difference in temperatures. But stuff like that was just so much fun.
Go out, jump through the hole in the ice. We had our socks on though, and that's all.
Well, I didn't have mine on.
Well, and it was cold. And then we would get on our motorcycles and race around the...
Well, there's pictures of that you'll find.
Oh, yeah, there's some dandy pictures. Wasn't it McClure that went through the outhouse when it was set on fire?
There's pictures of that too. Somewhere.
They set the outhouse
set
on
the
fire.
outhouse
He rode his bike through
I
it.
threw a pail of gas in through the window. And then, of course, the outhouse is made of 2x4s, you know, not like the things in the movies. And he had a hard time getting through it.
No, I have a story, a picture in Cycle Canada of a naked woman at a check once, which is always interesting.
Well, that was my cousin Tom's girlfriend.
Oh.
He said, I think we got a good idea, and he talked Kathy into this, stripping to the waist, and the checkers came in. Some guys didn't even notice.
No,
Some
these
guys
guys
never
ran
even
out.
noticed. And some guy said, wow, this is the best check of all.
Every course is good fun. You know, there's just you can't invent the stories. So every time you come out here, you have great stories to tell and great memories.
I was up to Coboconk last night for the checking in process at the Canadian National Corduroy Enduro, and I was as much impressed with the organization as I was with the fact that these fellows would enter and compete in an event as rugged as this is. There's a tremendous amount of organization goes into laying out the course and setting it up with the riders. And two of the people responsible are brothers Ron and Basil Jackson, who were congratulated by everyone we ran into last night for the fine job that they do year after year. All of the organization, of course, comes under the Canadian Motorcycle Association and the British Empire Motor Club.
There was places like the Sawdust Road or the Devil's Staircase, you know, little names we gave these places. And a couple of places we had to kick out beaver dams to lower it. We weren't anti-ecology, we just lowered the water a few feet. We didn't blow the dam, we just lowered it.
Just shot the beavers.
Come Sunday, the riders would be off to the 200 miles remaining in the Enduro, finishing at Burley Falls, 25 miles north of Peterborough. Some contestants would then be riding countless more miles back home.
At that time, there were a lot of the 500 single matchless AJS machines that were the ADC.
Road bikes, you rode the bike to the event and rode home.
Even put knobby tires on it. But a lot of guys just rode a road machine.
Most motorcycles in the Enduro were ordinary road bikes, heavy when wide with little ground clearance, non-folding kickstarters, footrests, and gear levers. The odd bike was a real dirt bike, with knobby tires, a single high muffler, and a bash plate, but this was less common in the early days.
Baz, what kind of machines do they use in this event?
Most of them are similar, at least, to road machines. They've been stripped to suit the woods. They're lightweight, moderate power, not exceptional. They're not racing machines at all. They're just fitted specially for the going they have to encounter.
Well, this essentially is not a speed event, of course. It's something like endurance, as you mentioned, which would mean machine against nature almost, isn't it?
It's a combination of machine and rider against the rivers and the rocks and the sand and the mud.
At that time, everybody just rode more or less a road bike that had been converted to an off-road bike. Now there's special off-road bikes which are very, very good.
By today's standards, the Cord trial of 1953 might have seemed easy, but because of the machines used, the name Endurance Run was more appropriate than ever. And with the second day being 50% longer than the first, the riders certainly understood the term. Of all the bug bites received by the competitors over those 2 days, there was one that had a permanent effect, the Enduro bug.
I originally went up to Canada from friends in the Enduro Riders Association from Columbus, and they kept encouraging me to try this corduroy, which was supposedly just about an impossible run. You had to cross streams with logs in them, and for the most part, you just about had to carry your machine. It was impossible, and so forth.
We didn't really get serious till the Americans started to come up. And they were very serious.
Yeah.
You know, they went to bed.
So I got my things together and encouraged my brothers to go along, and so we took off for the corduroy.
One brother was named Ted, and the other, I can't remember his name, but their last name
Penton.
Penton, yeah. They made a motorcycle called the Penton.
Yeah, and it was based on the
I remember.
what was the motor?
KTM.
Last night, Bob Wilson and Jim Chorley in Coboconk, Ontario, recorded an interview with John Penton, who comes from Lorain, Ohio, which is near Cleveland, and he is the three-time consecutive winner of the Corduroy Enduro, and he's presently competing in the event today. Somewhere on the course, maybe later on this afternoon, Jim Chorley will be giving us a progress report on how John Penton is doing.
You'd hear a motorcycle coming, and I remember I was at that check, and I said, he just came into view, and I said, there's John. And he turned around quickly and went back because he's coming in the wrong way.
Oh, wow.
He obviously got lost and come in the wrong way. He's coming in the wrong way to the check. Yeah. And so he disappeared. And then suddenly he came in the other way right on time. I mean, it was all woods.
Well, as we mentioned, we're at Enduro headquarters, and it's check-in point, of course. And some people have just arrived to check in, and we're going to find out now what happens on the check-in portion. Basil is in charge of the check-in, and coming in now, I think, is John Penton, who has won this event on various occasions, 3 times in a row. So we'll just listen in as they continue.
Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Basil. How is everything?
See, I think we got a number here for you. Then I'll find you. Number 22, John.
Not bad. And you know, after one trip up there and being successful, from there on, year after year, it had to be in our agenda to go to the corduroy.
I remember Ted. Remember he had a glass eye?
Yeah.
And he took it out, and he was rolling it on the floor, and he took his teeth out and was chasing it across the floor.
Well, he told him, remember Ted Penton with his glass eye?
Yeah.
When he went to the can when he's drinking beer, he put his eye in. He said, I'm keeping an eye on my beer.
Oh, he was a character.
Remember their cottage? They used to line the roof with beer bottles, gold rock, all the way around the
Powder House Saloon.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember the Tomcats and the fun we had with all the activity that went on before and after the run.
One time I remember they were all dressed in tuxedos and the women in formal dresses, and they lined up down the center of the highway serving drinks to everybody that came by. I mean, today if you did that kind of stuff, well, you'd be in jail and they'd throw the key away.
Don Hadower, you used to be a Tomcat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he was one of the leaders.
What the heck is a Tomcat?
Well, yeah.
A reprobate. Oh, you might say. Well, we supplied entertainment at that thing.
And they were just so crazy. And one time they had an old Dodge car, and there was about, I don't know, 10 or 15 of them piled into this Dodge car, and then they just drove it flat out into the lake. Everybody was bailing out and yelling and screaming. It was a great time, I'll tell you.
Okay, let's listen to this interview with John Penton, 3-time winner of the Corduroy Enduro.
John Penton, and John, you've won this event 3 times in a row, and here you are again. What brings you to an event such as this? There are no points, there's not really a big money prize, just a trophy. What is it that brings you up here?
Primarily my passion to ride off the road, mainly, and the challenge of my experience and abilities against the clock.
Really, what this is all about in Enduro is, to us, was just having fun.
The competitors in this particular phase of the sport are, you might say, different in the respect that that they just enjoy the competition of this nature, which is not a direct speed competition. And they're made up of every walk of life, from engineers to motorcycle dealers themselves. And I have met all types of people riding enduro.
Well, you know, there's one very interesting thing about the group of people who are competing. There's a lawyer among them, several engineers. Tom Hodgson, the well-known Canadian painter, is competing in this event today. There's a milkman, an engraver, but they're all professional and businessmen. And as I mentioned, Tom Hodgson, who I was astounded when I found him in the competition today. But you can see the kind of people who were actually competing in this type of event.
They weren't just a bunch of motorcycle bums. These people had I think about people like Ron Jackson, who was instrumental in the Dash 8 aircraft of de Havilland, and I remember seeing on television when they introduced that thing. I was sitting at my house in Hamilton, and one of the big people from de Havilland introduced this man who was really part of the reason the Dash 8 was here and built and being produced. And he said he'd like to introduce Ron Jackson, and I can remember this day jumping up and saying, "Jesus Christ, that's Ron Jackson." A guy who I'd known for a few years as a motorcycle guy who was up laying out the cord and riding enduros, you know. And there were several people like that, Donnie Charters, MC Charters, and printing in Toronto, who did menus for the place like the Royal York Hotel and stuff like that. And just so many guys like that had really got to the top of their profession. And yet I just knew them as guys that rode motorcycles in the woods.
I was wondering, Basil, things like safety equipment, helmets, gloves, that sort of thing. Is this involved?
This is left to the rider's discretion, but almost 100% of them wear helmets, as much to keep the branches off their heads as for direct protection on crashes.
This morning at 5:30, and that is very early, Al, the Jacksons, along with a couple of the other officials, were on bikes themselves to go over the course ahead of the riders to make sure that all the direction signs, and there are some 2,000 of them, were still in position, and to make sure that the course was absolutely clear of impassable objects. Apparently trees from time to time fall over the course and so on. It's their job, before the riders get on the course, to remove these objects. So they're pretty sturdy fellows themselves.
To some, unused to the rough terrain, the endless miles of gravel roads, trail, train tracks, river crossings, difficult hills, and the infamous Halliburton rocks, it seemed an endless struggle to finish.
This was another really intriguing thing for all of us American riders to go up and ride this run, because it was well organized. The Jackson boys and so forth had done an excellent job in laying it out.
Well, John, we know this is the major Canadian enduro. How does this stack up against the American situation? Do you have many down there?
We have, as a general rule, more competitors. We do meet up here as good a competitor, though. Very definitely. The Canadian enduro rider is a very good enduro rider, and they put on a very good and accurate event, which is not always characteristic of the United States events. Our national events in the United States are, you might classify, as accurate and good events as a general rule, but this particular Canadian National, we have always found, has been very accurately laid out and scored, and probably that is one of the encouraging things that bring us back to the Canadian National.
Look at some of the names in the trophy list and go back over the results. Yeah, we had the cream of the cream from the eastern side of the U.S. And like I say, they used to use it as a practice ground before they went to the ISDE.
As the word of this unique event spread, the Corduroy became one of the only Canadian enduros in which Canadian riders could compete against top American and international riders in their own backyard.
Let's listen now as Jim Chorley describes the start.
1964 Corduroy Enduro is underway. The first bike is off and going on this rough course. It will be taking them some 300 miles over 2 days. Don Nato. Don, 1 minute intervals, eh?
That's right. We're starting the first man 8:01 and continues on through about 50-odd riders until we're through.
Is that the complete entry? 50-odd. What is that, 51, 2, 3?
I'll just have to check here. I believe there are about 55. We had a few late entries last night.
Is this a good turnout, Don?
Yes, it is. We have to crowd our event in with a lot of American Enduros, and a lot of the boys come up and support it, and we're quite happy to have them.
The Cord is really a well-respected event for motorcycle off-road riders all over North America. You're somewhere, God knows where, someplace in Texas, you're in a gambling casino, and somehow it'll come up and somebody goes, oh yeah, I know the Cord, that's the event up in Canada there. And it's just amazing how famous it is amongst people.
Well, we listened to the start earlier this morning, and now it's lunch break time. And once again, our guest is John Penton, and also with me is Don Hatto. John, how did it look to you out there?
Beautiful, beautiful run. Well laid out, well planned.
Certainly have a beautiful day for it.
Oh, we sure have. I didn't do too hot. Got a little lost a couple of times. Running a little ahead of schedule most of the time.
Well, that's a good sign, isn't it, Don, running ahead?
Oh, not always. I was just wondering if you ran into any real rough stuff. Very rough stuff. Some new territory I believe the boys found. We loved it.
This is what makes the Enduro, of course, is really rough country. It's similar to a car rally that has bad roads. They were so fast covering that kind of territory, and I can remember John Penton one time, he had a 250 BMW, which was a very ordinary road bike. And he put some special forks on it and so on. And I was out there, and quite frankly, I could go pretty good at that time. I'm talking about now the 60s. And I'm going along, and I think, boy, if I were showing these guys how fast I can go. And they're probably looking at me thinking, wow, that guy's really going. And then John Penton would come by you, yell at you to move over and come by you and say thanks, and away he'd go. And 5 minutes down the trail, he disappeared. And you think, wow, how does that guy do that?
Hello, what's your name?
Sal Skirpo.
Where are you from, Sal?
Hartford, Connecticut.
You're defending champion, aren't you, Sal?
Yes, sir.
Hello, what's your name? Frank Graves. Are you competing in this event?
Yes, I am.
Whereabouts do you come from?
Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, you're a long way from home. How long have you been coming up here?
Well, I was here 1 year before.
Hello, what's your name, sir?
Sheldon Smith.
And you're from where?
Peterborough, Ontario.
I understand that you've been a winner of this competition.
Well, I was fortunate enough in 1956. I won it overall, yes.
And somebody was telling me that you're the Canadian champion, at least on a couple of occasions.
Well, I was been fortunate up here. I've won my class twice. I've been an overall winner once, and I was on the winning team 1 year. And I've always finished fairly well up, which I'm quite fortunate.
Claire Matthews.
Where are you from, Claire?
Campbellville, Ontario.
You brought up a little bit of a different idea here at the Enduro, Claire. It's the sidecar rig, and this must be extremely difficult.
Well, not really. I find it easier than solos. It doesn't fall out from underneath you.
And you keep it up there with the three wheels going for you. What about going through trees and mud and that sort of thing?
Well, we have our difficulties there, but we managed to squeeze through.
Well, Sal Serpo has just arrived in here at headquarters, Gold Rock, well, the headquarters as we call it. Sal, how did it go?
Well, it went okay most of the day. Had one spill, but it didn't put me out or anything.
John Penton just arriving. John, how'd it go?
Should ride it the evening.
Well, everything looks in great shape. I don't see any bumps or broken parts.
Not yet.
John, thanks very much, and good luck to you tomorrow.
Right. Thank you.
John Penton.
We meet again.
You right on time?
I was a few minutes late.
How much do you think you're off?
All day? Around 20, 25 points, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. And any difficulties with the machinery?
I've got a miss at low throttle openings, which has been a little bit of a bother in the bush. It's all right in the open road.
No broken parts, though?
No, nothing.
Well, Bill, good luck tomorrow.
Thanks very much.
Bill Sharpless.
And Bill, of course, was the ultimate mathematician, I'd call him. And I remember the first Enduro I ever rode was in Welland. And I was riding along, and I didn't really know what I was doing or what the timing was. And Bill was a minute behind me, and he finally pulled up beside me and said, "Larry, do you know you're running a minute early all the time?" And I remember saying, "Bill, I only know it's Sunday." But Bill could tell you anywhere in this 200-mile route, halfway through in the middle of the woods, he'd pull up and say, "I'm 30 seconds early right now."
Sheldon Smith, our Canadian rider from Windsor, wasn't it, Sheldon?
No, Peterborough, Ontario.
Peterborough, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of another fellow. Well, how's it going for you?
Well, I've been quite lucky. I've been doing quite well this morning. This last section was a real backbreaker. It was real rough, and I lost a few points there. I think everybody did.
When you say real backbreaker, real rough, could you explain a little bit, Sheldon?
Yes, logs, trees down with the wind, and rocks, and there's one fella I seen on an old wooden bridge that had collapsed, and the guy had tried to ride over the bridge instead of skirting through the creek around it, and he'd fallen right through the bridge. He was all hung up on the logs. The whole bridge had collapsed on him. He was having quite a time in there to get out.
Bill Sharpless, a Toronto boy, taking part in the Enduro. And Don, I guess you know this fella pretty well.
Bill and I have been friends for a long time, and he's always been my worst competitor. Bill's done everything on motorcycles and always been tops at it.
Well, Bill's a big, tall fella. How tall are you?
6'3".
And that's a little tall for bike riding, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's handy for getting your foot down. There's a big hole there.
Bill, I won't ask you. I'm going to ask Don. What are some of the awards that this young fella has taken over the years? Can you remember a few of them for me?
Well, he's been the #1 motorcyclist in Canada by winning the #1 plate, which involves winning an awful lot of events, and he could go on and on.
He's an all-around motorcycle man.
Very much. He's done an awful lot for the sport, too.
You look at the trophy, my dad won it a couple times in 54, 55, something like that, and didn't win it again until 67. And, you know, someone once, you know, I'd ask my dad, well, how did you do? He says, well, I finished second all those years to John Penton, you know, most of the years anyway, you know, not every year. So John was quite a rider.
And I think it was 62, I went to the Cord and rode it and finished it on an older 250 Jawa motorcycle, and I thought, boy, this is really something. You start out at that time you started out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you rode till 6 o'clock in the evening, and you tried to maintain some kind of a schedule. Generally it was 24 miles an hour, which sounds ridiculously slow, but when you think about the type of terrain you're going over, it becomes incredibly fast. And just enjoyed it so much, and I thought, boy, this is, you know, usually you went to a race and you signed in and you sat around for an hour or two, and then you got to ride for 20 minutes or so, and then you sat around another 2 or 3 hours till your final came up, and then you rode. Well, here was an event that once you sat on the starting line, you were going to ride for 6 or 8 hours. Yeah. And certainly filled out your day. And I always said one of the best parts about Enduros was after the day was over and you sat around having a beer telling stories about, you know, do you remember this? And you'd say, no, I don't remember that. And then you'd say, but you must remember this. And then the other guy would say, no, I don't remember that. And it was just where you happened to have a problem. And the place that he was talking about happened to be a place where you didn't have a problem, so you don't remember it. But it was always great fun sitting around after the event's over talking about all the things that had happened during the day. That was a lot of fun.
Everybody went up there the night before. The bikes were impounded, you know, it was like an international style event, you know, it was the only one we had like that. It wasn't just show up in the morning, so there was a lot more socializing, you know, and like I say, it just had a atmosphere about it, you know. You'd get up there the years when I wasn't riding, but we were helping out with it. You get up there on Friday night and there'd be all these guys from the States there and all these funny bikes, and you know, it just and the movies were playing in the lodge, and it just had a real neat feel to it, and so it made a difference to how you just looked forward to that event.
Entries continued to increase every year from 14 in 1953 to more than 300 in the early 1970s. The event distance changed from 400 miles in the 50s to around 290 miles in the 1960s. In 1968, the Corduroy Enduro became the Corduroy International Trials, and FIM rules were introduced.
I think the earliest thing that I remember about the Cord would probably be 1974. I think it was the last year my dad rode. I don't remember going there before that, and we went up there, the whole family, and then, but he he didn't finish. I know the first day, I think the earliest Can-Ams had a real problem with the Bosch ignition, and it broke on him on the first day. So I remember him going out with the pre-runners the second day because he got another ignition on it and got going. But that was the first time I remember, and then after that, he got arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis really badly, so he stopped riding. And after that, we would go up there and we would run a checkpoint, and then he would let us go into the trail and sweep the trail and pull the arrows and like that. We were probably, I would have been 12, 13, and my brother and sister and I, we'd go in, and he and my mom would drive around to the other end with the truck and pick us up. And, you know, I guess some people figure 12-year-old kid going in there to sweep, what good are we? But we were competent, so we got through. So it was kind of neat. That seemed like a huge adventure to us. We probably only rode 5K a trail, but, you know, it was a big deal.
After Les North's untimely passing in 1973, the headquarters moved from Gold Rock Lodge to Deer Lake and then to Locarno Lodge.
And my sister got to ride the Cord 2 years before me. See, my birthday, that was the worst part. My birthday's in November. I had to wait a whole extra year before I could ride the Corduroy. People, those years leading up to it, people asked me at the Corduroy, well, how old are you, Blair? I said 3 more Corduroys and I can ride. That's how I gauged my age. 3 more I can ride, you know. My first Enduro I rode was the Beagle Bash, first one of the year, and I was 2nd overall. I tied with Ross Lennox, a guy from the States beat me, and I was my first Enduro I'd ever ridden. So I just instantly, I was good at it, so I liked them the most, and the Corduroy was the biggest deal.
Dominating the early 1980s was Blair Sharpless, following in the footsteps of his father Bill. Between Bill and Blair, the Sharpless family had the most Cord wins with 10, followed closely by the Penton family with 9 overall wins. Bert Irwin still holds the record for the number of Corduroys run at 33.
The first year I rode, I was a junior. Tom Irwin was also a junior. His dad, Bert, rode, I don't know, 30, 35 Corduroys. He was a big fan of the Cord, and he owned a shop in Cornwall, just like my dad owned one in Scarborough. And so Tom and I knew that we were probably who we had to go after. I think Tom had bike trouble and didn't finish, and I ended up winning the junior class, and they have a trophy for the top junior, which is the white trophy.
Not having anything, never done one, I just followed, I followed the arrows. The arrows said to go straight, so I went straight. And Mark Giroux and Guy Giroux never caught me, never came up behind me the whole day, and I'm thinking, the only person I rode with that whole day was Bert Irwin. And I remember, I go flying through a mud hole, and ended up crashing. He'd, with his XR 200, would puddle along beside me, go by, and then I'd catch him, and I'd pass him again. Next mud hole, I'd lay it out again, crash. We did that for I bet you 10 times that day. Finally, I think I did finish ahead of him, but he was a lot smoother rider than me.
78 was my first Cord, yeah. That was the year of the infamous powder horn. There was this customer of my dad's. He was an Englishman, a trials rider, and he rode his trials bike in the Cord. He was a very good rider, expert level trials rider. And I passed him in one trail probably 6 times. I'd go by him wide open and I'd crash. And he said, Blair, you're going to kill yourself if you don't slow down. And at the end of the day, at the end of Saturday, we were tied our scores. But I had passed him, I don't know how many times during the day. It's just, I was a 16-year-old kid who had been motocrossing, and that's the way I was doing things. And then he, on the second day, I never saw Brent. I smoothed things out a little. But this Powderhorn Trail, we got into it and I got stuck, and I thought, is this ever going to end? And finally I came out on a beach and I saw the checkpoint and I thought, oh God, it's over. I've made it out of this trail. I'm going to live, And I went into the checkpoint and we rode down the beach and we turned back in, and it was the same length of horrible muddy trail all the way back. The check crew had come in by boat across the lake. That's how they got there. I figured there's a check crew. There had to be a way out.
We had a check on Red Pine Lake where the checkers had to come by boat because there was no road. And so that when most of the riders got to that check on the beach, it was beautiful, right? But when the riders got to that check, they thought there's got to be a road. But there wasn't. There was another 25 miles of trail.
But no, they came in by boat. And so I made it out and I finished. There was only 30 people finished that year out of 200 and some odd. I finished and I was 10th overall that year and won the novice. So I thought that was pretty good. I was pretty happy with my finish that year.
The first year I went was 76. That was probably the heyday of the Corduroys. It was the last year we ran FIM style rules, and in 77 we went to Brandex rules, CMA style rules. So 76, we still had the American 6-day riders coming. They used it as a practice before they went off to Europe to race the 6-day. Not only was it my first corduroy, it was my first enduro. And a greener rider has never went to the cord. And I did finish the first day. Man, I crashed and I just about killed myself that first day. And I wanted to quit, but I didn't know how. I didn't know where I was, and I'm following these friggin' arrows. And every time I'd come to a gas stop, I'd pull in, and the OCMC women were gassing me up that year, and they'd gas me up and stuff a sandwich in my mouth, tell me how great I was doing, and away you go. And I didn't have the guts to quit there. Well, I'll just get away from this check and I'll quit down the road. And before you know it, you're back in the woods, you don't know where you are, you're following these arrows again. Anyway, I did finish the first day, and I found that a whole lot of OCMC members didn't finish the first day. Holy cow. Maybe I'm an enduro rider after all. And but I had no intention of riding the second day, and I had a good excuse too. I tore the sole right off my boot. I explained that to some of the people at supper. Damn, would you believe three pairs of boots appeared in our step that night, all my size. So I couldn't use that for an excuse the next day. So the next day I went out, started, didn't finish, got as far as the Devil's Staircase, and that was it, packed it in. But the seed was sown, I guess, because I come back the next year. Come back on that was in 77, rode a 76 Husky, and I did finish. And then in 77, I went back, and boy, I had improved. Not only was I going to finish the event that year, I was going to win something. I was going to win my class. Well, I broke my leg about 10 o'clock in the morning, and that would be my longest corduroy, I guess. It was about 5:30 in the afternoon by the time they got me to the hospital. They had to carry me about 3 miles, and boy, that was a chore for the guys carrying me as well as me, I guess. Anyway, that was my first trophy. I got the Hard Luck Trophy that year, and it was a tough way to do it, but it was a start, I guess.
The Hard Luck Trophy was awarded to riders who encountered just that. Reasons for winning this prestigious award included such things as busted leg, burnt car, munched finger, junked it, and fell in septic tank. Throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the cord continued to attract attention and grow in size, with riders from Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, and U.S. riders from Connecticut, Indiana, New Jersey, Virginia, and Ohio. In the early 1990s, the responsibility for the event shifted from the British Empire Motor Club to the Steel City Riders under the leadership of Larry Bastido.
People up here have just been incredible. I've made some great friendships. I still come back up 3 or 4 times a year to visit people.
I would have to be Matt Spiegelmeier, because he goes very well in the rocks. He's not the sand rider that, but in the rocks, he is, and he's so solid. He doesn't make, not usually does he make mistakes. He doesn't fall down, get hurt, or anything like that. And we ended up riding the Blackwater 100 together. The only year I ever rode it was the last year they ran it, and we ended up together the whole day riding together. It was great. And he's such a super guy. He's just he was the rivalry I think through most of those years, because he was the guy for just flat out speed. He could match me. And so it was whoever had the best weekend, sort of thing.
Maybe the fact that it's a 2-day, most of our enduros are just 1 day, and but I guess it's a similar type format. You have to go fast in the rocky trail to be competitive.
And then there was a lot of years there where I would set the fastest special test times, but I was still young. I crashed a lot. It's not very forgiving, the cord trails. You've got to have the speed, but you've got to be steady enough that you know what. That you finish and that you don't wreck stuff. I had some DNFs, I watered out, these sort of things. And then 83, I think I won it. I finally won it overall, and I lost 0 points. I didn't lose any points all weekend. Yeah, no one ever did zero points again. It was a pretty good feeling, because I knew when I came out of the last trail that I had won, because no one could beat that score, So I didn't have to wait for results. There was no protest, and it didn't matter what they did, because I had a score that was going to win it.
I've got a special badge that one of the BEMC organizers put together after the event, because he was so impressed by the people who actually finished this one section. And I have one of those badges, so I kind of thought that was pretty cool that someone would be motivated enough to reward riders for getting through to that point just and putting together a badge, so I have that.
And then 2000, Ann and I got married on a Friday night. Didn't tell anybody. Helmet class, and he was there, says, what's going on? So I said, well, we're getting married. So we planned it a few weeks in advance, and we found a minister in Peterborough. He came up and he did the ceremony. We had our daughters with us, Casey and Tasha.
Yeah.
And they had a little mini bike, so they rode this little 50cc into the woods. We had a Kawasaki tent sent up. It was right behind the bowling alley in Bob Cajun, and it was on a Friday night. Yeah, and we set this thing up in there, and everybody that was there, they kind of was curious, so they just came along. And I think I invited my mom and your parents. So they came over, but we didn't invite anybody else. So it didn't cost us much for the wedding, but it was a memory we'll never forget.
We rode off. Warren brought a bike.
Yeah, Warren brought us a KLX. I was on a Kawasaki that year. So he brought this KLX, and I remember like 3 years later, we could still see the confetti on the special test. It was right on the special test, right behind the bowling alley. So it was really cool.
And you went and won the race that year.
Yeah, and I actually won the race that year. So it turned out really, really well.
And I think I had an 11-year run where I was in the top 3 for 11 straight years, and I think that just being able to be competitive with these really good riders up here. You know, at the start of every quarter ride, remember, we'd get down the road and there'd be a little reset. We'd all be kind of gathered there before we would get into the real race, and just looking at all those guys and just to be able to be competitive with them, I think was just a real special thing for me.
In 2001, the Enduro was dubbed one of Canada's longest-running motorsports competitions. In 2003, the Corduroy Enduro celebrated its 50th year, a classic event with family and local heritage going back to its beginnings. It is the history and tradition of the trial that allows the Enduro to, well, endure. One might ask oneself, why struggle through harrowing backwoods terrain, through forests and rivers, and over rocky hills and valleys? Why battle the fatigue and the elements, hunger, thirst, and exhaustion? It's all in pursuit of a hand-carved wooden trophy and the personal satisfaction that accompanies any hard-earned victory. It's all to say, I survived 2 days in September.
It's been an extremely pleasant afternoon, and it was very pleasant in Coboconk this morning, too.
Those damn engineers never raised the cord, right? All right, gentlemen.
You want to go in there or no?
I owe you many beers.
Till then, Al Hamill,
Bob Wilson
in Toronto, and Jim Shorty in Cobocock. This is the CBC Radio Network.